The courtroom erupted into chaos as Taylor Swift's legal team unveiled shocking evidence that left Blake Lively visibly shaken. Attorney Brian Friedman presented materials directly connected to Taylor's father, instantly shifting the tone of the hearing. What had begun as a tense legal session quickly turned into a turning point that rattled everyone in attendance.
Houston's lawyer, Brian Friedman, came out and said he had sources that basically showed him and told him that, Blake Lively's lawyer had contacted Taylor's lawyer. Not even Blake had contacted Taylor, but the lawyers had contacted.
That's correct. And now it is indeed a season of harvest.
Taylor met Blake's stare with a sharp, knowing smile, quietly mouthing words that sent a chill through the room. "I'm not your puppet. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever." The message was subtle but unmistakable, a declaration that the balance of power had just changed. There's always that moment when silence ends with an explosion, and this was it. After months of quiet restraint, Taylor Swift finally delivered a move that stunned the courtroom. While Blake had been dominating headlines with polished interviews and performative outrage, Taylor arrived calm, composed, and devastatingly strategic. She didn't resort to online rants or dramatic statements. Instead, she walked into court and let her attorneys dismantle Blake's defense piece by piece. What was supposed to be a routine hearing in May 2025 became an unforgettable legal showdown that exposed the true weight of Taylor's patience and precision.
Taylor was obviously upset when she found out she was called one of Blake's dragons. And she had kind of, in this lawsuit of...
Said counsel is advised that future misuse of the court's docket may be met with...
Lively's lawyer had contacted Taylor's lawyer. Not even Blake had contacted Taylor, but the lawyers had contacted each other and said, "We really want you to put out a statement of support as to why Blake was not with you at the..." Taylor was like, "Oh, what? That's a record scratch on any..."
Taylor's legal team came prepared for battle, armed with affidavits, records, and a decade of evidence revealing Blake's pattern of manipulation through PR tactics. Judge Lehman's patience had clearly run out. When he brought his gavel down, it echoed like thunder, as though he was determined to restore order by sheer force. The next stage of Taylor's case exposed something far darker, a 10-year web of coercion and deceit. This wasn't speculation or gossip. It was a detailed timeline backed by hard evidence. The courtroom watched in disbelief as Blake's carefully built public persona began to crumble. For someone long celebrated as the golden girl of Hollywood, the unraveling was brutal. The question hung heavy in the air. How do you recover when your entire career begins to look like an elaborate illusion? Then came the shocking revelation of the so-called 10-year ultimatum. According to Taylor's legal filings, Blake's team had allegedly contacted Swift's lawyers with an outrageous proposal. If Taylor didn't publicly support Blake or explain her absence from the Super Bowl, they'd release private messages spanning a decade. That's not negotiation, it's extortion. And the audacity was astounding. To believe Taylor, a woman constantly targeted by lawsuits and media intrusion, would bow to such a threat was pure delusion. Friendship doesn't justify blackmail. And in a court of law, desperation isn't a defense. On February 14, 2025, while the rest of the world was exchanging roses and chocolates, Taylor's team dropped an affidavit that shook the courtroom. Signed under oath by Brian Friedman, Baldwin's attorney, the document wasn't a PR stunt or a social media caption. It was a sworn legal statement carrying the weight of perjury. Within its pages was a detailed account of threats, timelines, and emotional manipulation so severe that it was described as emotional terrorism. Even that term barely conveyed the scale of what the evidence revealed.
How can this information get out there? The only way that could happen was if Brian Friedman subpoenaed Taylor Swift and she would fight the subpoena, and then voila, all this information can come.
Being rather unpleasant instead of being America's golden girl. And now it's this massive legal fight that is going to absolutely drain their resources and completely damaged their reputation.
Hadid also not talking to Blake, and they were friends. I've seen them together.
Out there, creators, all the people that have been digging into this, all the mommy sleuths that found things, have all of this together has created this moment when we starting to really see the truth there of what has happened.
Judge Lehman didn't hold back. His criticism of Blake's team was cutting, labeling their entire approach as a publicity ploy disguised as legal defense. The courtroom atmosphere shifted instantly. Blake wasn't fighting for justice. She was fighting for image control. And that image shattered. Years of branding, interviews, and polished appearances collapsed under the weight of facts that refused to bend to PR spin. The controversy only deepened with the revelation of the deleted messages. As if the alleged threats weren't enough, Blake reportedly asked Taylor to erase their entire message history from the previous year. Not archive it, delete it completely. In today's digital world, where screenshots outlive everything, that idea bordered on absurd. The notion that a decade of texts could vanish unnoticed showed both recklessness and denial. In an age of instant receipts, trying to rewrite history is not just bold, it's doomed from the start. The judge wasn't convinced by Blake's panicked attempts to control the narrative. Her last-minute request to delete messages arrived just as subpoenas were being issued, a timing too convenient to ignore. It looked less like damage control and more like someone trying to wipe fingerprints off the evidence. Her PR team's response only worsened things. Within 24 hours, they issued 3 contradictory statements. It reeked of panic. The public could see through the chaos. Every denial sounded like an admission wrapped in spin. Instead of protecting her image, Blake's team fueled the perception of guilt. The courtroom fallout was inevitable, but the reputational collapse outside was even faster. Meanwhile, Taylor's legal team stayed composed and silent. They didn't need to rush into rebuttals. Blake's unraveling did the work for them. Taylor never raised her voice or posted a single tweet. The evidence spoke louder than words. The contrast was striking. Blake grasping at her fading narrative while Taylor, poised and unbothered, let the system expose the truth. The supposed power dynamic had flipped completely. By February 14, 2025, another bombshell hit. A voicemail, carefully timed and devastatingly clear. Brian Friedman received it directly, and it dismantled what little credibility Blake had left. Every failed threat, every misleading headline, every PR spin came crashing down. Valentine's Day that year wasn't about romance. It was the day Taylor Swift's legal precision rewrote the story and claimed an undeniable victory in the courtroom.
Now, he knew this already in February, so he was sitting on this information, and he was probably thinking of a way that he could get it out to the...
The voicemail confirmed what many had whispered but few dared to state outright. Blake Lively's team had attempted to pressure Taylor Swift. This wasn't rumor or internet speculation. It was precise, documented and filed under oath. For once, the evidence spoke louder than any press release. Blake may have believed she could charm her way out of it, but recordings don't bend to PR spin, especially when they're part of a sworn legal record. And then came the shocker. Michael Guttel, Blake's own attorney, was allegedly the one who made the call to Taylor's legal representatives at Vano law firm. This wasn't hearsay or vague accusation. The voicemail contained a direct demand. Either Taylor publicly support Blake or face the release of 10 years' worth of private messages. Predictably, Blake's camp launched into damage control, denying, distracting, and deflecting. They claimed the audio was taken out of context, a phrase that's become code in celebrity PR for, "We got caught, but we hope you're too distracted to notice." But the attempt failed spectacularly. By the time they tried to suppress the story, Brian Friedman's affidavit had already gone viral. It spread across social media like wildfire, dominating feeds within hours. The timing, Valentine's Day, made the betrayal sting even more. It wasn't just a legal bombshell. It was a theatrical collapse of a brand built on charm and control. While Blake's side scrambled to contain the narrative, Taylor's camp stayed quiet. There were no posts, no cryptic tweets, no televised interviews. Just a cold, methodical legal response that dismantled every part of Blake's argument. Observers started calling it the Swift maneuver, a flawless display of silent strategy where you let your opponent shout while you quietly tighten the legal net. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Blake, unraveling in real time before judges and journalists, versus Taylor, poised and unbothered, watching the trap close with quiet precision. Then came Judge Lehman's moment of reckoning. His patience had clearly run dry. When he addressed the courtroom, it wasn't just a ruling, it was a rebuke. "This is not a Bravo reunion," he said sharply, cutting through the theatrics. While he dismissed Friedman's affidavit on procedural grounds, he made it abundantly clear that Blake's antics had crossed the line. His frustration was unmistakable. At one point, he warned Blake's attorneys that the court was not a red carpet, and that abusing legal channels for publicity could lead to sanctions. His words hit like a verdict of their own. The court might have ruled on technicalities, but the moral weight of the moment left no doubt about where his sympathies lay. By then, the damage was irreversible. The media sympathy that once cushioned Blake evaporated overnight. Her reputation, carefully crafted over years of PR polish, was in ruins. Even though the affidavit was dismissed in the court of public opinion, the outcome was clear. Blake had lost. Taylor, on the other hand, hadn't said a single public word. Her evidence had done all the talking. Blake's downfall wasn't orchestrated by clever marketing or rival gossip. It was her own miscalculation. She tried to treat the courtroom like social media, believing charm and curated messaging could overpower sworn testimony. But the legal world doesn't deal in aesthetics or hashtags. It deals in truth. And that truth stripped her image bare. This wasn't a scandal she could bury under a carefully worded apology. It was a full-blown legal implosion. Now, Taylor stands firm, her legal team unshakable and her public image untarnished. Blake, meanwhile, is left trying to claw her way out of the wreckage, facing questions about blackmail, coercion, and manipulation. Even Judge Lehman urged her to leave the Hollywood theatrics behind and face reality. And then there's Ryan Reynolds. Sources suggest he wasn't just watching the chaos unfold. He was quietly making calls, allegedly working behind the scenes to limit the fallout. But even his influence couldn't contain it. Blake's meltdown, her team's missteps, and Taylor's disciplined restraint have redefined how celebrity legal battles play out. It's become a cautionary tale, a reminder that no amount of fame, PR polish, or social media influence can outmaneuver cold, hard facts. In the end, arrogance met accountability, and the courtroom made